Don't you ever drop your weapon, brothers and sisters. And your weapon is your knowledge. Your weapon is knowledge. And when Dr. Baba Buntu comes on, brothers and sisters, remember this, unlearning all the false information we have been programmed with takes time and patience. Don't give up. We've got this. We have got this. So tonight, our keynote address is going to be on African spirituality, indigenous knowledge and practice. And I'm honored, brothers and sisters, to have with us a personal friend of mine, but internationally acclaimed historian, freedom fighter, and activist, Dr. Baba Buntu, a phenomenal king on our platform. Dr. Baba Buntu!
Greetings, my brother, and greetings, family. How are you all doing?
Sunny Banani, King.
San Bunani, yeah, bo.
Come on, my big brother. How's it been? How's it been, my king? How's it been?
Well, life happens and we are pushing forward. You know, there's so many obstacles and so many things that can easily bring you down, but we come from far. We come from thousands and thousands and thousands of years of progress. So we have a huge legacy to follow. So every day we need to rise in power. Every day we need to set our foot forward and just walk and march and be there for and with each other, because we got a whole continent and a whole Pan-African world to sort out, and we will do just that.
Brother, you are so on time. You've only just come online, but earlier on, I was addressing with the family online that, you know, what we call electronic racism, which is massive, massive and massive. And what I mean by electronic racism are those gatekeepers that are running Zoom, that are running Facebook, that are running Instagram, that are running Twitter. And they are literally working day and night to make sure that they're trying to stop our online movement, brother. But as you just said before, that's lightweight, man. When we study what our ancestors had to go through, when we study what they had to go through, and the hidden hand that anytime there was an uprising, the so-called master, yeah, would try to infiltrate us and destroy our uprising. And we get the same thing going on today, my king. We are working. There are so many things they're doing behind the scenes to stop us. But brothers, we've got a foundation set and we are building, brothers. So just as you said that, rise up in power, rise up in power, rise up in power.
Thank you so much, my brother. And thank you so much for the platform that you so consistently bless us and shower us with. You are actually making us, you are spoiling us, because you make us believe that we are possible, and that's not an everyday experience for most of us. So thank you. Thank you for pushing. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for so humbly always giving so generously of yourself. And again, a very warm greeting to all the brothers and sisters on the platform. Every now and then an email pops through from one of the Hidden Truth family members, and it warms my heart so beautifully that we can connect through all these different obstacles and distance and time and all of that. I'm really, really humbled to be back on this platform tonight. Thank you so much, sisters.
I'm not gonna lie to you, brother, Dr. Baba Buntu. You know, I am so blessed to have the brothers that join us on this platform. We've got a fantastic team behind the scenes. But brother, as you said before, I love it when I see the emails coming through, and I see, but every time you come on our show, the emails come flooding through to our website, and I've joy and honor to forward them on to you. But brother, I don't want to waste your time, brother. I know you've come here not to mess around. You've come here to lick shop on Babylon and all the Babylonians. So brother, when you're ready to share your screen, brother, fire upon your hits, soldier.
Thank you so much. I'm very ready, and please let me know if you can all see my screen.
It's about to share. It's about to share. Okay. We're just waiting for an image to come up, but it says you're beginning to share. So hopefully there's no technical hitches.
Okay, yes. My computer is a little bit moody today, but we're not going to give that much attention. We are, like you said, we are not here to joke and to waste time. And again, just a very, very warm greeting to all the sisters and brothers. And, you know, Brother Mohammed, tonight, well, it's maybe partly a lecture, but I wanted it to be more of an interactive reflection on what does it mean to be indigenous when you are uprooted from the place that you are indigenous to. And what does it mean to uphold and reclaim and find and express what once was indigenous to you, but because of what has happened to us and what has been done to the African world, and especially to those who have been forced into incarcerated experiences around the world, to connect with something that you no longer fully recognize or take time to really gravitate towards, or do not know if you fully can stand authentically within. And I wanted us to just be in that mindset, because as much as this, I didn't want this to just be an intellectual lecture. I wanted it to be a journey of the heart, a journey of the spirit, a journey of us connecting to the root of our being. And I think that starts so much with understanding that we were chosen to be the first people on this earth, and that means something. It means it's not so much about superiority or ranking people according to a hierarchy, but it means something to being a blueprint of what is possible and where this world is supposed to go. And when we have become a people that functions largely at the bottom of existence, we are not even providing the keys that humanity actually needs from us to move forward. So we need to do some work, first and foremost for ourselves, but it's even beyond that. We got the keys to this world, and that's a huge task to take on for us who now have become used to be at the pit, being at the bottom, being at the lower existence of life. So, yes.
Brother Doctor, just two quick things. I apologize for coming in, but just
no, that's perfectly fine. Please do.
Three quick things. One is, brother, I've not even seen this presentation, but just looking at your first screen, the first shot, brother, I just love the colors, the arrangement, you know, because I'm a fellow presenter, and so I look for things like this, and I'm just saying, brother, this is top class quality presentation already. I've not even seen it, but just that first opening scene is fantastic. That's number one. Number two, Sister Samira, Dr. Baba Buntu wants an interactive session. So, Sister Samira, if you see any questions or comments that you'd like to bring in, please feel free. Brothers and sisters, if you've got questions, put it in the Q&A box. Yes, if you've got some serious comments, drop it in the chat box. Samira, please come in at any time. Our brother is just giving you the green light. He wants it interactive. But number three, Dr. Baba Buntu, and I am going to shut up after this, is that, and I want the brothers and sisters to understand what I'm saying and take it in the right context. Brother, just in your opening statement, I was vastly turned on. And what do I mean by that? Knowledge, wisdom, and understanding turns me on, brother. And just in your opening statement, my king, I could feel the hair on the back of my neck standing up. I could feel the inner core of my being. As you were just introducing, I felt that there was an essence inside of me that knew instinctively that what you are teaching already is right and correct and is literally eternal knowledge. And that turns me on massively, brother. So, brother, keep turning me on and keep firing this knowledge. Thank you very much, my king.
Wow. Now I'm speechless. Thank you so much for what you said there. And I think you are picking up exactly on the level that I hope we can proceed on. I'm speaking to that place deep within that is difficult to articulate and name and find a term for. And thank you for seeing the visuals. I know you are a wizard when it comes to visuals and interpretation of colors and compositions of pictures. And I'm very intentional when I do lectures. And just before, because I'm not going to comment on the pictures, and you will see a lot of pictures through this presentation, but just to preempt and say that I think it's very important, even visually, that we re-script ourselves into the center, because maybe we can actually start that exercise right now. I'm asking you, close your eyes just for a few seconds and imagine an Africa and an African world that is free? What does it look like?
Woo!
What does it look like when there's no oppressive elements, when you don't have to think about your complexion, when you don't have to think about why anybody's looking at you other than I must be looking incredible? That's the only thing that goes through your mind. What does the world look like when nobody thinks you are a waste of space, when nobody is offended by your presence, when nobody has to attack you, sideline you, silence you? What does that look like? Can you see it when you close your eyes? I'm giving you just a couple of seconds. It would be helpful if you can jot a few responses to that question. Can you see it? And if you can see it, what are some of the, how would you word what you saw? Did you see colors? Did you see children running around? Did you see nature? What did you see? And I'd like for those of you who also felt that I didn't know what to see, like I couldn't bring myself to see something. That's important because Sister, please, let us know.
So yeah, in the comments, we've got, there is a black face in the, oh, hold on, sorry, that's a different comment. Happiness, bliss, heaven. We also have Sister Diana saying it looks like peace. We have Shakura saying it looks like home. Sister Julia says a community full of love. And we've got Sister Angela saying, I saw people walking around in their purpose.
Wow.
Borderless land and freedom to roam in safety. Brother Jay has said that. So there's beautiful. A lot of similar themes coming through, but I think that those ones really spoke to what the community is saying.
Thank you so much to everyone for what you shared. And again, for those of you who struggle to bring forth an image, this is part of why I think it's so important to also in our visual presentations that we, so this lecture is going to speak to going into the world that seems impossible. What does it mean? You know, you are all familiar with our dear, dear brother, Robin Walker, who wrote the book, When We Ruled. What does it mean in our script to rule? Because rule can be a very violent word. If you are ruled over, that might not be the nicest experience, at least in the world that we live in right now. But maybe as African people, our concept of ruling was vastly different from what rulership has become. And I'd like us to, we need to activate all our senses to see where we are going. It's almost like we need a map because we're going into the unknown. We haven't been free in a minute. We don't know what freedom really looks like. We don't know what African governance really is supposed to look like. What we know is what it isn't supposed to be. We know much more about that. So African spirituality, indigenous knowledge and practice. I'm going in, and of course I'm greeting you as usual, Sanibunani, I see you. And I'm thankful that you are seeing me too. It's so important to be seen. It's important to be visible. And it's important to want to be seen. And it's important to want to see each other. I'm here not just alone. I'm here representing a family, a community of warriors who have decided to do something about all these things that we are worried and concerned about as African people. And for us, that interpretation has come together through a company called Ebukhosini Solutions. Ebukhosini means House of Royalty. And here you see the directors and the board members. I could have shown you many, many more pictures, and I might get a little bit of a chance at the end to show a few slides. But here we have Mama Tebogo Buntu, my queen and co-warrior, who we are directors of the company. We also work with Pitsira Rakupala, who is currently based in New York, the US. We have Mpumi Shabangu, we have Yonela Boya, and we have Mangala Mangala, who's operating the office. And these are just a few of the faces of the family, and we are anchored around the African family, trying as best we can to live every day for the purpose of liberating our people, body, mind, soul. You know, I might jump a few slides in between because I've got a lot to say, but I also want to give some space. But I'm very interested in practical decolonization. And I think that some of us have now started to use this word a little bit carelessly. It feels good. It's a word we can bring up and say. I think we also need to recognize that to decolonize is ugly. To decolonize is painful. To decolonize is to choose to live less for a while, because it is also to push certain things away from you that are toxic, that have become normalized, but that are actually not supposed to be normal. So let's not talk about it as an easy thing and just as a buzzword. As a platform, I told you that Ebukusini means Royal House. We deliver a number of services and programs in the community and around the country and the continent as well. And our objective is really to empower the African family and the community. I'm going to go into a few slides that I want to share. And then as we go, feel free to stop me, ask questions, and more than anything, share something from yourself. So I wanted to start with science. Science is often a word and a term that when it's used and planted in front of us, most of us, especially in the beginning, we don't feel we can really respond to it or critique it or say, I don't agree, or it's a bombastic word that sits there and you better know it and you better take down notes because it's presented to you the way that's supposed to be. You're not supposed to ask questions or say anything in addition to that. So how often science is explained is that it's a knowledge system which relies on laws that have been established through a method. And those methods could include observation, creating a hypothesis, and then testing that out and get some results. And once that has been done, at least in the books that most of us are forced to read when we go through our educational journey, that is called the truth. And when something is called the truth, it's like it blanks out whatever response or other comment you have to that, because you're supposed to bow to it. You're supposed to just take it down, run with it, not really question it. I want to say, let us question everything. Europe has, and when I say Europe, I don't mean just geographically Europe. I mean Europe in its presence as an ideal, as a fear factor, as a dominating force, as the school books that we're reading around the world, as English, as everything that represents Europeanness, presents an understanding of science as being objective, meaning that European science is very much about taking a step away, separating yourself from what you are studying. Once you get into what you study too much, that is often seen as a low quality. You're supposed to stand on a certain point and look down on what you study. European science is about being quantitative, meaning hard facts, counting, one is one, day is day, night is night. There's no in between, there's no gray areas. Things must be robust and strong. It's academic and it speaks to the intellectual mindset of the mind, how it thinks, how you formulate a theory, how you determine, how you label. It's literal. It's normally things you can touch, things you can see, things you can observe, and everything else is seen as mysticism. It's also now become more and more a force of being global. So when we talk about a global world, or we say that the world has become smaller through technology, what we really mean when we say that is that the world has become fully European. That's what it really means, because in that global village, there is no chief that sits at the table who represents Africa. There's hardly even other races, but definitely Africa is not sitting at that table. The world doesn't have to learn African knowledge. The world doesn't have to bow to our great classic artists and scribers and artists and people. Africa exists in the corner, never sits at the main table. That's how science comes to us. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on this, but feel free. And then juxtaposed to that, we could say that Africa's science is almost opposite to that. It's subjective, meaning that what we know has a lot to do with how we relate to the world and what we experience the world to be. It's qualitative, meaning that within an African understanding of science, emotions are allowed, dynamics and joy and connection and happiness, that's allowed. That's part of the scientific experience. It's experiential, and many of our scientific knowledges cannot really be known unless you have gone through it, unless you are within it. There is a term that I know probably many are familiar with that says you cannot teach what you don't know. So to know in an African understanding is to have experience. It's contextual, meaning that it has a lot to do with how we relate, how we interconnect. And at the top of the chain of what is seen as important within African science is the human connection. That stands above everything. Whereas in European science, that can easily be pushed to the side. Technology is often revered for how it can exist without human presence. To the African mind, that doesn't really make sense, because we are on this planet to bond, to build, to connect, to be a greater people. So when the objective becomes to not do that, there's something that really falls apart within an African understanding of what the world is supposed to be. And it's local, and that means, and I think this is so profound to understand about African spirituality and science, that African knowledge can mean different things to different people at the same time in the same place. Meaning we can be at the same event, we can have different roles, we can observe similar or the same situation or performance or what is going to happen, but it might mean different things to all of us. And that doesn't mean because you are young, your experience is wrong, or because you have been through some illness lately, that what you have experienced doesn't count, or because you are old, your interpretation is old school and past. It doesn't mean that. It means it holds its own strength and power and is necessary for all of us to indulge in and be aware of. And that speaks to a worldview. If we look at how the Western world really sees the world as a place of conflict, and the African, at least the original script, we have changed a lot since what has happened to us, but how we used to see the world was a place of striving towards harmony. It was a place of seeing every human connection as a possibility of greatness, of progress. In the European understanding of the world, any other human being, and especially if they looked or behaved or spoke differently to the people in question, that could be a possible threat. That could be people who want to take us over or do something to us. So before we can allow them to do that, we need to intimidate them, we need to overpower them, we need to tell them that they should not even dare to think about destroying us because we can destroy them. That's a very different understanding of the world. And when you think that is the truth, you move very differently in the world, even when you are articulating knowledge. So that if I could illustrate, and I don't want this to sound silly, but whereas the European, in a blunt sense, has come into nature and the universe, seeking to destroy, seeking to push away, seeking to overpower and take, the African has come in with the question, how does this work? What is the message in this? Why is the day and night? What does that mean to me? How do these things correlate? Coming into the world as a student, trying to understand and read and take lessons from the curriculum that actually sits in all the organisms around us.
Brother, if I can just interrupt you, sorry, there's a couple of questions that have come through and I thought This would be a good time to interject. So the first one is, what were the original countries of Africa called before colonization?
Okay. So we must remember that the need, and this is actually a very great question even on this slide when we talk about worldview. Lines and demarcations and borders. I'm not saying that in ancient Africa there was no separation and there was no lines that would tell one people or place from another, but this dependency of demarking the world with borders that you cannot cross, walls that you cannot climb, areas that you must never find yourself in, only for the reason that you don't belong there. That is a very Western outlook on the world. So I'm saying that to explain that the ancient Africa didn't have a need for countries in the same way that the world has become dependent on it now. Because now it's very important to demark which nationality are you? Which passport do you carry? Do you have a strong passport? Or do you have a weak passport? Do you speak a language that is international? Do you speak like all of these demarcations kind of speaks to a certain hierarchy. And that hierarchy was not pronounced in the same way in ancient Africa. So there would be there would be names of places, there would be names of clans. So places would be called after people, after certain occasions, after a river, after a mountain, after natural circumstances that would have occurred in that particular. But this thing of borders between countries didn't exist in the same way. So even the word Africa, and I know there's a long discussion about, is this an indigenous word to Africa or not? I'm not going to go into that debate right now because it is quite lengthy. But I think I know of writers who quite authentically write about the root word of Africa coming out of one of or several of African languages. But we need to remember that at a certain time, there wasn't a need to name the continent. Remember, naming even has a colonial imprint in the way we relate to the world today.
Oh, perfect. And I know that you're probably going to answer this question, but just to set it up, we have, how do we become more African-centered living in a European environment?
Thank you. I think I will save the response to that when I get a little bit further in. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. But just a comment that's coming from Sister Joy with an eye is, thank you, Dr. Buntu. You have eloquently described why most of us feel out of place within a European environment. So
thank you so much, sister. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I wanted to bring in a definition of power that has been scripted by Professor Wade Kwako Berko Nobles. That power can be seen as the ability to define reality and to have other people respond to your definition as if it was their own. And I think this speaks to the sneakiness of colonization. Because often when we talk about colonization, we talk about the very abrupt, violent, direct force, which is important because there's a lot of that in colonial history. But there's also sneakiness. There's also softer textures. There's also expressions of kindness, expressions that looks like help, that looks like bonding. But in between, there are these second agendas, where the agenda is to make somebody relate to, and then in the name of being the colonizer's representation, wanting people to relate to their concept as the only one. And that is what school has become to most of our children, and probably in most of our experience as well. That's what it has been, to learn other people's knowledge. And with the absence of our own, we often are bound to think through the lenses of those who have oppressed us, because we don't have access to our original scripts. And that, of course, is very pronounced in the diaspora, but I would say on the continent as well, there's a very similar situation. And I think that's important to say too. So now I've said something about how we see science, and that in Africa, or at least in ancient Africa, I think it's important to stress that, because whiteness is not just embodied in white physical presence and people. Whiteness also sits right here. We carry whiteness. We reproduce whiteness through our being, through how we speak, through how we lecture, through how we do our work, set of businesses, because this is the knowledge that has also sieved into our being. And then it's important to remember that African science comes from a spiritual foundation. And to have a spiritual foundation means to acknowledge divinity and cosmic realities, knowing that there's something beyond what you can touch and smell and feel, and seeing that, which is often referred to as the metaphysical, as the main world, meaning that the main operation of being actually happens in the spiritual world. And many of us, I think, have come to relate to the spiritual world as a place we go sometimes, as a place we go when we pray, or when we listen to a certain song, or when we meditate, or when we go for a walk and finally have 5 minutes to enjoy nature. But being a spiritual being and understanding your spiritual roots is really, and this is not about floating in the air or not being present in the physical world, but it means that you recognize and you interact with and you see that spiritual world as very, as essential for the life that we're supposed to live in the physical world. And that creates a holistic consciousness, which is observed through relational actions, meaning that spirituality is not just something we go to and do. Spirituality is also the awareness of when I honor you as a sister or a brother, when I know that I cannot disrespect you, when I know that as much as I want to talk, maybe I should open my ear and listen to you. That has a spiritual connotation as well. So it's about how we treat each other, how we live together, how we solve conflicts, how we raise our children. In every act that we perform on this earth, there's a spiritual component. And the more we are drawn away from that, the less powerful we become. Because as African people, this is where we have always drawn our power from, to stand in this world, to be innovative, to think about building pyramids. I mean, most of us, if we lived at that time with our outlook of world from this world, we would probably not even want to join those. We will come up with all kinds of excuses. I'm not building no pyramid. What do you mean I'm going to work for 60 years and I'm not even going to see the finished results? I'm not going to do that. Someone else can do that. No, I want to do nice stuff. You know, that ability to see that this is not nice labor, this is not beautiful to do, but it's going to create something that will empower all of us. And because of that, I'm willing to give my time. I'm willing to convince my family that we will work together on doing what we can to be part of that. That's a value that we can only find and take and understand from the spiritual world. And of course, all of this can only be done when we live in societies where ma'at and justice is actually practiced. Because right now, it's not safe for us to trust too much or to give too much or to be too helpful. We always need to think 3 or 4 or 5 times before we give, before we help, before we lend a hand to anybody or anything. And it's not supposed to be like that. So it takes some time to really go back in our spirit and mind to understand how we used to function. And that means that science is governed by ethics, principles of order, organizing into holistic unity. And I think I shouldn't even start to unpack the concepts of Ma'at and Ubuntu, just to say that Ma'at is about truth and balance. Ubuntu is about honor and honoring the spiritual aspect of a human being. And that means we can then see that if that should be the principle you need to follow as a scientist, I think we then see a lot of science that is wrong, because we have science that kills, science that creates illness, science that ambushes and pushes and bullies and take up space and make other people who may live in a certain area where scientists now say they must move because we need to dig, we need to do this. There's a lot of inhumanity in how science has evolved from a European perspective. And that takes me to the main topic of today, indigenous knowledge. I needed to say that so that we get to an understanding, because indigenous knowledge is often seen as not knowledge. Indigenous knowledge is more seen as hearsay, as superstition, as fear-based and very shallow theories and concepts of the world. And it is actually the highest form of knowledge. And I'll say a little bit about it, but sister, if there is some questions or comments, please feel free to jump in. If not, I will just continue. So indigenous knowledge, what does that mean? And I think I've said part of it because it is scientific knowledge. It's in the African context, it's subjective, qualitative, communal, and local. It's knowledge that has been developed collectively, meaning that African science has not been so, has not found it important to always just call a theory after a certain person. It's not about personal gain and having a word for an individual. It's something, I create something, I present it to you, You work on it and you take it to a higher level. You present it to a group, they take it to a next level, and we are all enjoying it. It's not, but why are you taking it away from me? No, I'm actually benefiting from seeing that what I shared with you has become greater. So it's based on experiences and explanations through generations, verified by elders. And this is so important. Where are the elders in this so-called modern society when they are pushed to the back, seen as not important, seen as, and not having a status in society? And it's also passed on through experiential learning. I'm coming back to what I said a little bit earlier, that knowledge, the way you know is to go through a process of experience. For instance, the reason why in African culture it is so essential to go through initiation process and rites of passage is that you cannot stand before the world and just single-handedly declare yourself as married, or declare yourself as a woman or a man, or declare yourself as a leader, a king, or what. You need to be guided there. You need the elders' wisdom. You need to be filled up with everything that the society that you are supposed to serve wants you to know. And once you know that, you have to live by ethics. If you are asked to be a leader, you have to serve. The minute you start to become selfish, the minute you start to think, you know what, I've got power, I can have a lot of women lusting for me, I can get some extra portions of this, I can build a bigger house. Once you start to mingle into that part of your selfishness, you will, at least when African society is working in its original script, you would be taken to task. There would be a committee of people that would take you out of that position, discipline you, and if you're still not listening, you would lose that position. That speaks to that order that I mentioned a little bit earlier. I wanted to share, and this is the only scholarly part of this lecture that I'm bringing in, because I really wanted it to be more relational. Indigenous knowledge system explained by two scholars. One says, this is knowledge that draws directly from people's social narratives and artistic expressions, plural spatiotemporal dimensions of lived environments, cultural practices, language, and reflexive dynamism to surroundings and interaction. Hence, it is what is closest to people's frame of reference. So it's life. The second one, it includes systems of knowledge that articulates people's civilizational, social, economic, scientific, and technological identity. These two quotes, I'm bringing them in again to just underline that our knowledge and our ancient knowledge is highly scientific, highly valuable, highly meaningful, and very important for us to reclaim, study, bring back into reality, maybe in slightly new forms and ways, but yet the same, very, very essential to our existence and future. To explain a little bit more about indigenous knowledge, and I want you to think about, so the simple definition of indigenous, everybody's indigenous, by the way. So it's just that we have gotten into a sense of modernity where people can kind of go above the indigenous or go outside of what the indigenous story is. So for instance, European people are never thought about as indigenous to anywhere. And they may only be really, really indigenous to a very small part of the world, but they have taken up a space that is seen as universal. We go to Europe's knowledge, we go to Europe's books, we go to Europe's presentations, and we think we are doing a global act, whereas we are actually doing an indigenous act. We dress like them, we talk like them, we learn similarly to them, we compete in the workplace in similar ways to them and trying to be more like them. And that means that, remember what I said about power? That is what we live on a daily basis. You know what? I think I want to jump, and maybe I'll come back to this, but I wanted to say something about indigenous education. I wanted you to think about, each and every individual on the platform tonight, where would you go to learn more about your indigenous knowledge? And I wouldn't know exactly where people locate themselves from. And even if there are people, I'm sure there are a number of people who may have lived most of their life or have been born in the UK or in Europe. But it is quite certain that you as a family haven't been on the European continent for a very long time. So you probably looked at your roots outside of Europe. And when you go there, when you visit, when you are home, when you are with your people, who are the knowledge holders that you can seek knowledge from? Because Africans on the continent and Africans in the diaspora has done this magical thing that at the height of the deepest forms of oppressions, there's so much valuable information that we have still kept, even if it's in the corners, even if it has been sidelined, even if it has been marginalized and taken out of all kinds of curriculums, you can still find strong traces of it. And I'd like to give you a task. Research your indigenous knowledge. Research how your grandparents and anyone who came before them, if you can reach that information, how they dealt with life, how they dealt with health, what kind of herbal medicines were used, what kind of advice was given to the young, how was marriages protected, how was young people molded from child to teenager to youth to an adult. Within those questions, you will find, in many instances, a lot of very valuable information, some that you may have to tweak a little bit and bend into a world that obviously has changed. But if you heard me very well when I talked about indigenous knowledge, we are supposed to further develop our knowledges. We must get away from this concept of knowledge as something we go back to. Even us as African people, when we say we need to get back to our roots, we need to go back to our indigenous and spiritual script. Yes, we need to go back to connect. But everything after that, we need to remember that we are walking forward. It's the Sankofa principle. We are going forward. We are shaping a future. Indigenous education, because what I'm talking about now is actually education. And this is why even the concept of school, the way we now have thought about, the way we now have been forced to think about education as something that happens within a certain building from morning till afternoon, that we need to put our children in so that they can be wise and intelligent and get jobs. It's a little bit foreign to the ancient African mind, because education would be a daily activity. And the first school you enroll in is your home, because the home is supposed to be a place of learning. It's supposed to be a place where you anchor yourself, understand the world around you, understand where you come from. And to anyone who's asking, where should I begin? I get what you're talking about, Baba Buntu, but where do I begin? My life story is different. And I'm sure we have many different life stories. But where you begin is to research your family history first. It's very important to know who we are and where we come from. So these things, I'm not talking about just a shallow form of a family tree, which I think everybody can enjoy, and seeing that we have a big family and we come from far, but it's something much deeper than that. Who were wise people in the family? Who were given advice? What do we remember? What do our elders remember? Are we taking down what our elders remember? Can it be preserved for the future? Can you do something so that your children's children can actually have access to something that by that time may be gone and very difficult to get hold of? I'll pause.
Again, I'm interrupting you, brother, but the question
No, it's absolutely fine.
So question number one, which I think flows on nicely from where you've just paused there, is indigenous knowledge the same as knowledge of self?
Wow. That's so important. That's such a beautiful question. I think I want to say, for you to attain your indigenous knowledge, you need to start with knowledge of self. So yes, it is part of the same form of knowledge, because, and this is why I'm saying it that way, for you to understand the script of our ancestors and those who came before us, you need to have a confident understanding of who you are. And that might not always be a beautiful story, because many of us come from very painful backgrounds and a lot of violating experiences. But knowing them, instead of saying, no, I don't really want to know, it brings up so much venom. And yes, but if you don't dig it up, these venoms take on their own life and they start to sieve around you, and they start to create a form of, let me call it, darkness around you. and you struggle with life, you struggle to find your feet, you struggle to move on just from the things that you're not so prepared to look at. And I would say African culture allows us and encourages us to go through ceremonies where we can connect with who we have been, where we come from, what has happened in our family, and find cleansing and healing from it. So yes, in order for you to go into the fullness of your indigenous knowledge, you need to start with knowledge of self.
Perfect, which leads on to the next question, which is, would the trauma we've endured as a people throughout the diaspora, or diaspora, depending on how you pronounce it, be relevant in this discussion?
Is the trauma that we have experienced in the diaspora, is it irrelevant?
Is it relevant in this discussion?
Absolutely. Because, I mean, I think we all know the top layer of our story being taken away from the continent. I mean, how the diaspora came about, how living in the so-called modern world, how that became a reality for millions and millions of Africans against their own will. But I think in this context, why it's important to remember is, remember the question I asked in the beginning, how do you claim, or what does it mean to be indigenous when the place you were indigenous to has become a foreign place, or a place that you no longer really connect with and cannot really navigate in? And I think that's why it's so important to just say something short to that question. You remember that I think it's at the slave castles in Ghana, there's a door that is called the door of no return, where African people were pushed out, and that was the whole point, that they will never come back to this country or this continent. And I think it's so important to oppose that. So for those who can travel to the continent, please do. Like, start here. If you have no connection point, we are right here. And if you want to start in another country, at least reach out to us and find out if we have a connection in that part of the world. And I would say it is important when you travel, when you return to Africa, whether it's for a visit, or you want to take up a job for a while, or you want to spend some more time. It is so important that you have or find a connection, a human connection, somebody who understands the journey of being based in the diaspora, what that means. And not everyone on the continent understand that, just as much as not everyone in the diaspora understand what it means to live on the continent. So that's also a journey we need to walk. And you belong here. Let me just say that, that's important. You belong here. Even if you come here and people mistake you for an African American, or you come over here and people just see money because they hear your accent, you belong here. This is your soil. This is yours. So you also need to claim it. And for those of you who can't travel for a while, reclaim it in your spirit. Close your eyes every day and say, I'm reaching out to these ancestors that I can't even talk, whose names I don't even know, whose faces I'm not familiar with, but I'm claiming my birthplace. I'm claiming my continent. I rise as an African every single day. And don't ask me what language I speak. Don't ask me which village I come from. I will find that out as I go. And as you begin that journey, you're giving a gift to your son and your daughter.
Brother, teach. Sorry, Samira. Brother, I pray that Allah blesses you every single day for this one lecture that you're doing today. Brother, you are touching every single element, every single atom that lies within Brother Andrew Mohammed. Teach, my king. I'm feeling this session.
So this is powerful, because a lot of the family are saying in the chat, and I completely agree. I have said it from when I went to Ghana in 2013, that if it's the last thing that any of us do on this planet, is if you've never been to any of the countries within Africa, you have to travel. And I had the honor of going to the Door of No Return at Elmina's Castle, and we're visiting all of the castle, but it's a profound experience. And I know that Sister Polly was speaking about it in the chat, Sister Essie as well, I can see there. And brothers and sisters, there's one thing to hear about it, but there is another to feel it and experience it. And the beauty of technology is that you can actually look at some 3D images and really start to position yourself, if it is something that you struggle to actually transport yourself to mentally. But I definitely second everything that you have said there, dear brother. I really do. Really do.
Can I just add to that, Sister Samira? You know, I've had the blessing of traveling all over the world. all over the world, Samira. And, you know, I fell in love with Jamaica. I fell in love with the Caribbean on another level. But I'm going to say this, and please, I hope that people don't take it the wrong way. As much as I traveled to Jamaica and I've been there umpteen times, there's nothing that touched me more than putting my feet on the spiritual land of Africa. There was something about the energy. There was something about the vibrations. There was something about the cosmos that I have never, and I've traveled around the world inside out. And I've seen all the bad press that Africa receives. And as someone who studies history, Black people, I love my people. I love nothing compared to when I put my feet on that special soil that we now know as Africa. I've never ever experienced it. There's a vibration, there's an energy that connects me to that land. So I'm feeling this, Samira, and I'm feeling this, Dr. Baba Buntu.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's so I hope to the sister or brother who asked the question about is the trauma relevant. I hope this helps to answer that. You remember I said that for you to fully step into your indigenous knowledge, you need to start with knowledge of self. And what we bring up here is a particular aspect of knowledge of self in the experience of the diaspora that has a lot of pain and a lot of trauma in it, many layers. But it also has many layers of beauty, rediscovering, power, coming back, reclaiming, finding, immersing. Like there's also many beautiful tapestries and textures to this that you need to allow yourself to go into. And I would say, I lived for a good number of years in Scandinavia. And one of the things that I found so essential was to connect with sisters and brothers from different parts of the African world. And I'm saying it that way because it's not only, I mean, African culture and African spirituality, as we know, is not only on the African continent. It exists in Brazil, it exists in the Caribbean, it exists in so many parts of the broader African world. But it's so important, it's a form of literacy, which is science, to reconnect, learn how to greet from a certain language, adopt a dish, start bringing that dish into the family. I appreciate platforms like this, and these are so essential for our health and wealth and our mindset and our spirit. But one aspect of Pan-Africanism and Africanism and knowledge that I've learned to really appreciate earlier on in life was also learn how to navigate just as a fellow African person. And those of you who have done this and maybe speak either fully or partly a language, you've seen how people's faces light up if you can greet them in their language. If you can, it's an instant connection, because even how we relate to our own African languages is in such a way that we're not even expecting anyone to be interested in learning them unless they kind of have to because they are come from a particular place. So that could be your beginning of the journey towards embracing your indigenous knowledge. So this conversation and this journey is for all of us, wherever you were born, however little you know, whatever circumstance you were raised, however detached you feel from the journey that your people have walked. I'm inviting you into it. There is an entry. There is a point that you can join, and you need to just find that. So Indigenous education is really about learning all the time in all kinds of contexts. It means that your worldview is that there's duality of unity, meaning that there's individuality and community at the same time. So you interact and you process, you think and you share, you learn and you download, you practice and you take on teaching someone else. So it's this way of weaving knowledge, learning, sharing, downloading, expressing all the time. Think about, and I want to mention an example. Sometimes we think of dance as a form of recreation, which it is. But dance is also a language. Dance is also ceremony. Dance is also memory. And Brother Andrew, you spoke about just setting your foot on the continent. Nobody has to tell you where you are. Nobody has to say anything about how you relate to this. And probably it's difficult even to describe it in that moment. There's just a sense of connection that is so deep. And what that is, in that minute, thousands of years of history flows through the energy around you. That's what it means. And that's a science that Europe doesn't really have a language for. So that's something you need to articulate. And this is why I was mentioning dance as an example of something that we kind of, and I'm speaking now from a continent where dance often has become this colorful presentation for tourists, so that you can get a few coins. And part of that, let me because this is not just necessarily something that people choose to do. It's a necessity. It becomes a necessity in a very oppressive and poverty-ridden world. But I'm just saying that there are also certain dances that are not supposed to be performed. There are certain dances that are not supposed to be just clapped to by an audience. There are dances that should not be done by any others than those who it actually refers to. So for instance, young girls are supposed to dance a certain dance or learn a certain dance to understand the sanctity and the spiritual strength of their bodies, so that they don't have to go out and fall for guys who approach them or think that maybe I should just, like, they will carry themselves because the language that was inscripted in that dance. Same for men, same for elders, same for youth. And I just want to mention that as an example, because we often think of dance as something we can just watch and look at and clap our hands to. It's a ritual. And you immersing yourself into that is allowing the deep, deep, deep ancestors also to give a language to express something that may have been dormant and quiet for quite some time. I wanted to get to the practice. I have no idea how I'm doing with time, so you'll just you'll just correct me when time is running out. I wanted to mention Africology, and I believe I have mentioned it in one of the previous lectures, but Africology is a way to stand in this world. It is to critique the colonized world, and Africology, it's often mentioned in more academic, like research, like study, like contexts. But for me, it's something that applies in all aspects of, at least for me, how I want to live my life. So Africology means to stand in the shoes and in the experience of who I am, maybe as somebody who begins my journey feeling completely lost, having lost a number of things that once was part of me, and allowing me a language to speak from there. And nobody can just criticize me and come and say, yeah, but you see, now you are stuck in your own story. I'm not stuck in my story, I'm telling it. There's a difference. Being stuck means that I can't talk, means that I'm shutting up, like this system around me seems to expect me to do. So me moving will mean that I'm going to say things, I'm going to articulate myself in ways that might not be so harmonious and beautiful to listen to, especially if you represent those who have oppressed us and still do. But I'm allowing myself, and I'm not apologizing for speaking that language and speaking from that experience. It means to build a culturally centered foundation. And that could mean you start with a drum. That, like, I'm trying to simplify because there might be a few in this platform who think that he's talking about someone else. I can't do this, I wish, but he's not speaking to me. I'm speaking to you, and I'm saying you can get a drum. Every African, allow yourself to listen to the drum. Don't just beat it for fun. Allow it to speak to you. Allow it to become you. Allow ancestors to come in and embrace you and remind you where you belong, who you are, what you come from, and the many places that you are instrumental for us all to be able to go to. Possibilities come through you. Yes.
Brother, can I just share? Brother, I don't know if you know what you're doing to me. I quickly want to share something, brother, just on this tip, because oh, brother, you just have no idea what you're doing right now. Just as you remember the words you've just been meditating with us, brother, and I want to just interrupt, brothers, just think about the words my brother's just been saying. Brother, I just wanted to share that with you. Just for, brother, I'm just saying you're vibing us tonight, King. You're vibing us tonight. Teach on, my King. Teach on. Share your screen and teach on, brother. Share your screen and teach on.
Thank you so much, brother. You gave us exactly the vibe that we needed right now. To hear and feel the drum. So important. So extremely important. Is my screen visible?
We can see it beautifully, brother, beautifully.
Okay, thank you so much. So in addition to what I've said so far, because I don't want to repeat myself, I've spoken about spirituality, I've spoken about science, I've spoken about cultural knowledge, I've spoken about the practices. And for me, Africology is to stand with all of that in this world. And in this world, I'm not free. In this world, my story is not told. In this world, African languages do not give you any jobs. And that's important to take note of and understand the history of, so that it doesn't just become this story that we can't really get out of, because we're supposed to proceed from here. But that means we need to also stand in what the journey has done to us. And that means I'm developing a Black conscious focus. I understand that skin color means something in this world, and that as much as I wouldn't want it to, it does. And from there, I make Pan-African strategies, and I become part of a process of rebuilding. So Africology for me is to bring in all these tenets from spirituality, from science, from culture, from political consciousness, from building myself as a warrior and doing something about it. I'm not losing sight of what I've said. Sorry, let me see. Oh, okay. I'm not losing sight of what I've said about Indigenous knowledge. I'm coming back to it just now. But I wanted to mention just 3 key words, and I'd like you to use them in your, whatever this lecture inspires you to do. Remember, I challenged you to say, where would you go and what could you do to find out more and reclaim more of your specific Indigenous knowledge? And that means you need to start within your family tree. I'm not saying that's the only place you can start, but that's the first place. And when you get to a dead end, or you feel you can't go any further, then of course there's many other possibilities that are open. We are family in the strict lineage type of sense, meaning by bloodlines, but we're also family by association, by history, by skin color, by our origin in the continent. Think about, in that journey, what would it mean for you to find a sense of balance? Living in a world that judges you every single day, living lives where you are questioned, maybe dismissed, maybe doubted, maybe disrespected, maybe looked at funny every single day. where would you go to find a sense of balance? Right where you are. When you don't have a flight ticket to go to a beautiful, serene island and be there, what would you do to find a sense of balance so that you can tap into some of the things that I'm talking about tonight? How would you use when you find a sense of balance? And it might not be a balance that lasts and a very beautiful, lasting peace type of thing, because that's not the world we live in right now. But I'm saying, what can you find a way to go to that? And then when you do that, what are you then inspired to create? And create could mean many things. It could be that you actually do something with your hands, because there are practical things we can do. We live in a modernized world. It could mean that you use what you know from tech school for an African purpose. It could be that you decide that in our family, we need to have family meetings because things are upside down. We're not communicating. Everybody's just doing their own thing. We need to come together every 2 weeks and sit down and joke to each other, sing for each other, get some vibes going in the house because it's too quiet or people are just too busy in their own corners. And then lastly, what would this mean in terms of you connecting? Connecting in the immediate and direct sense to people around you, or actually first and foremost within yourself. What does it connect within you? And then secondly, what does it connect with people around you? And then thirdly, what does it do to connect you also to the larger African world? And just to give some examples of those three that I just said now: balance, create, connect. I'm saying this in the space of using the concept of ma'at in a very practical way, because ma'atical life is supposed to be lived in along principles like as truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, morality, and reciprocity. This is the understanding of order from ancient Kemet. And that's the journey I'm inviting you on. Things that you can do in a quiet, when I say simple, I'm not saying easy, but I'm saying you don't need money. You don't need to necessarily travel somewhere. You don't need a counselor to sit with you all the time. If you have access to all of that, please use it. But I'm trying to speak to those who may feel that, but I can't really begin anything because I don't have access. You do, and you start within. Balance, create, connect. I hope you write them down, those three words. Maybe they don't mean anything to you right now. So let it simmer for a bit. Write it on a paper and let it simmer for a few days. Then come back to it. And maybe on a subconscious level, something is starting to vibrate and change. So, sister and brother, I need to get some advice now. I don't know how much time I have left, but I have a few slides where I wanted to just explain how we have found a way to work with some of the concepts and some of the things that I brought up tonight. But I don't want to take too long time, so I can close here. I'll take advice from you.
Brothers and sisters, well, I mean, talk to me. Should we give this brother an extra 5-10 minutes because time is up? But I'm just, brother, I want you to look in the chat room. Everyone's telling me to shut my mouth, keep you going. They want more, they want more, they want more. Brother, we definitely want you back. 100%, brother. It's only tonight as made me realize how much I've missed you, brother. Only tonight has really, it's just been mind-blowing. Brother, I mean, I'm happy to give you another 5-10 minutes. And just please, brother, I can't let the platform down. They want more. They want more.
Can I interject and ask some questions?
Yes, sister.
Come in?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you, brother. So we've got this question, well, 2 parts to a question. So firstly, there is a view that we cannot justifiably speak of African spirituality because Africa is so diverse. Can you speak to this, please? First question.
Okay. You know, it may sound like I'm not answering the question directly, but I'm coming. Just give me a chance. I said something earlier about African knowledge and science being different than to European or Western worldview, in that it is not always hard on definitions. It's not always, is it this or that? It can be a bit of this and a bit of that. And to the European trained mind, that's confusing. Like, no, make up your mind. What is it? Is it this or is it that? Is it day or night? Is it black or white? Like, you need to give me a definition. Yeah, but I'm giving you an experiential understanding. And that means that certain aspects of knowledge can mean something today and mean something different tomorrow, can mean something different in relation to my mother and mean something different in relation to my son. And either one of those doesn't make it less valuable or less true. So why I'm prefacing my answer with that is to say that we also need to learn that, and so my take on the question is, yes, African spirituality is vast. And I know often when we speak and remember, I'm talking about a subject that if we were fair, we should probably give a week to try to begin to understand. And I'm trying to unpack it in an hour or so. So I'm not really giving justice to the fullness of the topic. I'm very aware. And it may come off as we're saying that African spirituality is just this little packet that we can all just pick up and run with, and then everything is sorted. That is not what I want to say. I think I wanted to give a practical way into the topic, especially for those who feel that I don't know so much about it, and I hope we achieve that. But when that has been said and done, we also need to look out again and see the vastness, the many different expressions, the many ways of articulating, the many coexisting truths that are still related, that you find across the continent, within communities, between communities, in different corners and different places. So it's both and. It's both similar and very complex and different at the same time. And I think moving closer to the subject, we must do that in honor and respect of that. This is not something that you can just study for a day or two and then you know it all. It's an ongoing journey. And we should, because I think a European trained mind wants to get to, when can I do my exam? When am I a full scholar? When can I say I'm an expert? Well, if we study our ancient educational journeys, some people studied 40 years before they could even be teachers. So it's also, we're talking about a time and an understanding of knowledge as being very humble, not being somebody who professes and just take over, somebody who continues to study and study and study.
Love that. Thank you so much. And another couple of questions. Number one, how does feminine and masculine energy fit in with the unity of the community and individual relationships?
Wow, you really want me to go deep today. You know, maybe Brother Andrew, we can also set up that conversation where we go deeper into divine femininity and divine masculinity, because there's a lot to be said about that, especially in a world where we struggle so much with gender and violence.
Yes. Good subject matter.
Yes, no, thank you. But to say something shortly, we often understand femininity and masculinity very differently to how nature and the cosmic world wanted us to understand it. So we think of male as the representation of the male body, and we think of that as masculinity, and feminine as the representation of the female body. And then we have some attributes that we have ascribed, that men must be like this and women must be like that. So women are told you must be more feminine, and I think most of us know what that often means. Some women are advised that they are too strong, they speak too much, they are scaring guys away. That's why you're not getting married. Like, some women are being told that, and they must tone down, and they must. So there's some who believe that that's how gender works, and some men are also told that you must man up, you must be stronger, and that becomes a truth that we live with. I think it's a truth that we also need to contest, because African understanding of masculinity and femininity is much more diverse. And this has nothing to do with the debate in the westernized world of transgender, of multiple sexual identities. It has nothing to do with that, but it has to do with that, for instance, as a man in the ancient script, my masculinity is contextual. So in certain situations, I'm expected to act out a certain force because we are being attacked, or we have a lot of disaster around us, and men are then chosen to be the ones that go out and create changes. And that means I need to come with a certain force. But, and this is a very important example for me, it maybe helps to illustrate, when men, and we know it was not only men who were fighting, but I've heard this example being iterated as of men who would go out to fight or defend the community or the nation under attack. And then as they came home, they were not allowed to enter the homestead and the living of the society. They had to be cleansed for quite an amount of time, because the war energy had to be taken off. Because when they came into the houses and were meeting with their spouses and children, they were not supposed to come with the war energy that the war experience gave them. So that speaks to a contextual understanding of femininity and masculinity. Women will be in situations where they need to bring out much more of their masculine traits and expressions. Other times more feminine. Men the same. So femininity and masculinity is more about context and what is needed in that particular point, because it gets ridiculous. For instance, you know, when some say the man must be the head of the house, and then you say, but why? No, because he must be that. Yeah, but why? Like, just explain it. No, he's a man. Yeah, but why must he be? Like, I just want to understand. I'm not even saying anything against it. I just want to understand. Yeah, no, because he's a man. Yeah, but you're not explaining anything. What about a man who is ridiculous? What a man who is not nice? What about a man who hasn't really gotten to a point in his life where he still should be the head of the, what does that mean? And I think that for me illustrates a bit how we have gotten into this very narrow understanding of what the representation of manhood and womanhood should be. And I think it's so much more. And that doesn't necessarily impact so much on the sexual world, which, you know what, let me not even go on, because I can see I'm going to open up.
We're going to have a part two, family.
Yes,
we're going to have a part two. But another couple of very, very quick questions in terms of everyone in the chat and also in the Q&A are loving the images, the imagery that you have used to compose this powerful presentation. So a couple of people want to know, where have you actually obviously then taken those images from, and I'm guessing they would like to get access to them. But also there was a question with regards to a lot of the images used for a lot of the female depiction. The eyes are either closed, or I'm paraphrasing the question, but it's to do with, why is it that for the feminine, for the female, the eyes are either closed or there's light shining through and we can't really see the eyes properly? Is there a significance for us not being able to see the women's eyes in these images? Okay,
thank you. So to the first part of the question, it's hours and hours and hours of internet search, going through and coming up with all kinds of creative words for finding images, whether it's from an arts exhibition, whether it's from a book, whether it's from, like, so many different ways of combining words and phrases. But obviously, Afrofuturism comes in there, African futurism comes in there, Black and technology, like a number of constellations of different terms and words that then, and maybe I find one image there and one image there. I'll confess one thing. I'm very intentional normally how I compose the particular images for that lecture. Yeah, I'll admit that tonight I didn't sit down and carefully paired a image with a message, or said that in these, let's say there were 20 slides, I want this particular 20 images because together they kind of speak to a holism. I didn't do that. I quite randomly picked from a folder I have because I had little time and I rushed. And now being found out, Andrew, I don't like this meeting anymore.
That's the hidden truth now.
Because
No,
you're
I'm not trying to sneak away, because the question is very significant. Generally, I normally choose more images of women than men, especially when I talk about spirituality and power. And that is not to say that spirituality and power doesn't come through men, but I think we are often used to a particular masculine power, which is often depicted as a force or a brutal or a muscular or a weaponized or that type of force. And I just think that we need to also understand the depth of force when it comes in a format that we haven't really been trained to see as power. So stillness, closing eyes, being within, being in existence, not performing for a camera or for an artist or for an audience is also power. So I'm saying two things. I didn't carefully choose all the images. And when I go back, I might see that there was an overrepresentation of certain looks or certain, and that was not intentional. But to those images that have that presentation, it's more about that female sacredness and that power that, again, I'm saying that we have been indoctrinated to not really recognize as power.
Lovely. No, thank you so much for your transparency, brother. And the final question, which is a very simple one, and I'll be back in your good books.
Yes.
Yes, the slide before, a couple of people would just like to see the previous slide where you had the principles of my art. Yes, please.
Yes, sure. I'll let that rest for a little bit.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for the questions. And I think, sister, and also to you, brother Andrew, I think don't allow me to start showing the images. I will go into another, it's not going to be 3 minutes. I can promise you that. So let me not do that.
Oh, brother.
But this family, can I just close by saying this family excites me so much. The questions that comes from you, the comments that we receive afterwards, your presence sitting throughout such a long time, studying, engaging, commenting. You know, I take so much joy in after the session going through the comments of what you are saying, what you are sharing. It is incredible. So let me say thank you to each and every one. So I'm saying 310 thank yous right now. With those words, oh yeah, let me, can I do that? I've taught you Sanbunani as the I see you greeting. You can, this is the teaser for what's to come next time. But I wanted to get to a word which is siyabonga. There it is. I lost it. 1 second. So the word is siyabonga.
Okay, educate us then, brother.
Yes, so siyabonga means I thank you, and it's said in a plural sense. Siyabonga. Yes.
Siyabonga.
Yes, we can see it. Beautiful.
It's said in a plural form, and there is a singular, which is ngiyabonga. But I always use siyabonga because I want to remind me that when I see you, even if I'm sitting with a singular person, I'm also sitting with your story, your ancestors, your spirit. Like there's many that are represented through you. So I use siyabonga. So I'm saying to you, I thank you all. Siyabonga kakhulu.
Oh, brother, Dr. Baba Buntu. Brothers and sisters, this has been Nubian Tuesday. Please, not for me. If you felt this brother's sincerity, his wisdom, his historical knowledge, his observance of tradition and awareness, please drop some ones. Not for me, for Dr. Baba Buntu. I told you, internationally acclaimed. This is the brother that we start off every single show with. Brother Dr. Buntu, whether you're with us or not on a weekly basis, we say Sani Banani. That came from you. Wow. And that's no joke, brother. Ask all the platforms here with me right now so they know whether I'm lying to you or not. That's the effect that you have on us, brother. We don't have a hidden truth unless your presence and your teaching has been shared with us. Please, please, please take time to read the comments. And Sister Samira shared with you probably some of the questions that we probably didn't get through to. But Dr. Baba Buntu, will I be wrong or would I be out of order to ask you to verbally, in front of everyone, state whether you can come back again soon? I'm not talking about months and months away. Will you be able to come back soon?
Anytime you want me, I'm here. Anytime.
Wow.
And we got through the questions. We actually went through 21 questions.
Look at that.
A round of applause, brothers and sisters. We got through.
So much love, so much love. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. And the 310 we can see are just the laptops, brother. On my count, we don't have all the count on there right now. And this is with Zoom blocking so many people from getting on. Can you imagine? They're not going to stop this from happening, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Keep standing on every single Tuesday. This has been and will be a great platform for our liberation, brothers and sisters. And this is something that they can't stop. It's too late. It is too late. Brothers and sisters, you are with the Investigator of Hidden Truth. Please, in the platform, show the love to Dr. Baba Buntu. This has been an amazing night. You're with Andrew Mohammed.
We're just out in sunny Portugal.